They're not always trying to rekindle the relationship. They're just trying to see if the version of you that used to chase still exists. That one truth shatters more illusions than most men want to face. Because when she reaches out during no contact, it rarely wears the mask of love. Sometimes it comes dressed as blame. Sometimes it whispers nostalgia. And sometimes it's wrapped in a silence designed to make you break first. But beneath all of it is a single exam you never agreed to take. A test to see if she still holds the same power. A test to see if you'll still play the same role. A test to see if your silence is just a tactic, or if it's become who you are. This is not about decoding every word she says. It's about understanding why she's reaching out, and more importantly, how to respond from strength, not from the old hunger for her approval. Because the hard truth is, most women don't return for love. They return for control, for clarity, for comfort. But you didn't walk through fire just to hand your peace back over. The man you're becoming doesn't chase emotions. He observes them. He doesn't explain himself to stay relevant. He lets his absence speak what words never could. So if you're ready to see her patterns without falling back into them, if you're ready to protect your evolution instead of proving your worth, start this journey now. Like this video and subscribe to Stoic Station. And I want to hear from you. Drop a 1 if you've ever felt someone trying to pull you back into their story, or a 2 if you've learned to let that story go. Because in a moment you're going to see the very first sign she's hurting during no contact. And it's not an apology. It's something far more revealing. Let's dive in. Sign number 1. They rewrite the story to protect themselves. Sometimes the first real sign that someone is genuinely hurting during no contact isn't an apology, a confession, or even a request to talk. It's a rewritten version of the past. One day you hear it in a carefully worded message, through a mutual friend, or in a roundabout email. You never really understood me. I had no choice but to walk away. On the surface, it sounds like reflection. In reality, it's something else entirely. What you're seeing is the mind's most reliable defense mechanism, self-justification, at work. When someone loses emotional access to you, when they no longer have a way to influence your state of mind, they often feel a gnawing discomfort. To live with that discomfort, they create a story that makes the separation feel necessary, even inevitable. This isn't always done with malice. Sometimes it's unconscious. But the purpose is the same, to protect their image of themselves and reduce the weight of their own choices. Picture a colleague who walked out of a high-pressure project without warning. Months later, as the team is thriving without them, you hear that they've been telling people you never valued their input or ignored their contributions. Or think of a family member who cut contact during a tense period, only to later tell others you were emotionally distant and they had no choice but to step back. These narratives aren't about truth, they're about comfort. And here's where the danger creeps in. If any part of you still wants reconciliation, your instinct will be to correct the record. You'll feel a pull to explain your side, to defend your character, to point out all the ways they've twisted the facts. But the more you engage, the deeper you walk into their version of events, and the more you validate their need for that version. You end up arguing not with reality, but with a carefully constructed story designed to make them feel justified. The emotional trap is subtle but powerful. The moment you start defending yourself, you shift from living your truth to seeking their approval. You trade peace for the fleeting relief of setting the record straight. And in doing so, you reopen old wounds that were finally beginning to close. They sleep easier because you've played your part in their narrative. You, on the other hand, walk away drained and unsettled. The Stoic answer to this is simple but not easy. Refuse the war of narratives. When they present their version, acknowledge only your part and nothing more. Say, I take responsibility for my part and I respect your perspective. Then stop. No counterpoints, no proof, no emotional deposit back into the account you've been closing. You do this not because you've lost the argument, but because you've chosen not to live inside it. In Stoic philosophy, you cannot control the stories people tell, but you can control the truth you choose to live by. Your peace doesn't depend on being understood by them. It rests on understanding yourself and guarding your own integrity. That is where your strength lies. So before you respond to a rewritten past, pause and ask yourself, am I speaking to be understood or to protect my peace? If the answer is the first, wait until you can choose the second. And when you do, let your reply be brief, clear, and final. Protect your energy for the life you are building now, not the story someone else needs to believe about yesterday. Because here's the viral truth no one tells you. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is the thing that leaves no room for debate. And in that space of silence, they'll feel something far stronger than your argument, the reality that their story no longer has the power to pull you back in. Sign number 2. Your growth disturbs their comfort zone. The thing that truly shakes them isn't your silence, it's seeing or sensing that you're doing better without them. People can adapt to your absence. They tell themselves you're still orbiting in the background, waiting in quiet, ready to be pulled back into their world when it's convenient. But growth, that's a different threat. Growth means you're not just gone, you've outgrown the version of yourself that needed them. And for someone who was used to being your center of gravity, that's unsettling in a way they can't easily explain. After a separation, many expect you to linger. They imagine you checking their updates, reacting to their wins, still carrying a small torch in the dark. Even if they never admit it, they want to believe they still matter enough to influence your mood. But then something happens. You stop feeding that belief. You stop sending updates. You stop seeking their opinion. Your focus shifts to your work, your health, your friendships. You're not making a show of your progress online, posting calculated images to spark curiosity. You're just living it, quietly, consistently. This is where the real shift begins. Without that steady drip of emotional feedback from you, the likes, the texts, the subtle check-ins, they feel the loss of their position in your world. Their sense of importance starts to erode. For some, it shows up as friendly curiosity. Hey, what have you been up to? For others, it comes as subtle jabs about how you've changed, or even passive-aggressive comments that mask discomfort as humor. And sometimes it emerges as open irritation. These reactions aren't about the details of your life. They're about the void your absence has created in theirs. The human ego struggles when it realizes it no longer has influence over someone it once shaped. Your progress becomes a mirror they didn't ask for, one that reflects their own stagnation or unhealed spaces. If you're not careful, they'll try to pull you back into the familiar dance, not because they want to walk forward with you, but because your forward motion without them is too uncomfortable to watch. This is where you must remember the difference between living for approval and living from principle. True growth is not a performance. It doesn't need an audience to be real. In fact, the most potent kind of growth is often the one no one sees until the results are undeniable. The Stoics understood this well. Strength that depends on applause is weakness in disguise. The fact that your progress unsettles them is not a signal to slow down or prove anything. It's proof that you're no longer playing the same game. So what do? You keep building. You keep showing up for yourself, for your goals, for the relationships that are reciprocal and alive. You protect the privacy of your process. You don't give them a front row seat to your evolution. Not out of spite, but because some journeys are too sacred to share with people who aren't truly for you. Audit your routines and your motives. Ask yourself, am I building this life for show or for substance? If it's for show, you'll find yourself chasing validation again, just in a different form. But if it's for substance, the work will feed you, not the opinions of others. And that's when you'll know your growth is real, when it no longer needs to be seen to be secure. Here's the truth that pulls people in and keeps them watching from a distance. They can ignore your absence, but they can't ignore your evolution. And when that evolution happens beyond their reach, in a place they can't touch or control, it forces them to reckon with something far more unsettling than losing you. It forces them to reckon with the fact that you never needed their permission to outgrow the life you shared. And once they feel that, they'll never see you the same way again. Sign number 3. They come back, but you don't need them anymore. It often happens when you least expect it. After months or even years of silence, a message appears. The tone is warm, familiar, almost disarming. I've been thinking about you. Or maybe we gave up too soon. These words have a way of slipping past the logical mind and going straight to the heart. They stir memories you thought you'd put away. They can awaken a longing you believed was gone. And in that moment, a part of you feels the temptation to reach for the door you once closed so firmly. You remember the good moments first, the laughter, the inside jokes, the way you felt seen and understood. But if you're honest, there's a shadow behind those memories. The cost, the compromises, the quiet pain you carried when the connection wasn't what you needed it to be. Those things don't vanish just because time has passed. They're part of the truth too. What makes this moment dangerous isn't just the pull toward the other person. It's the pull toward the man you used to be when you were with them. The man who back then might have been willing to bend his boundaries just to keep the connection alive. The man who thought that love meant proving, chasing, or fixing. But that man may no longer exist. And if you've done the hard work, he shouldn't. When they come back, they often speak to who you were, not who you are now. The question is whether you're strong enough to let the present version of yourself make the decision. Because if you walk back in without thinking, without examining whether this aligns with the life you've built, you risk betraying the very growth you fought for. You risk telling yourself, in actions if not in words, that the work you did to heal was negotiable. This is why you must pause. Before you respond, before you agree to meet, before you let nostalgia color your judgment, ask yourself one simple but profound question. Would the man I am today choose this person now? Not based on the history, not based on the comfort of the familiar, but based on your values, your vision, and your standards today. If the answer is anything less than an undeniable yes, the door stays closed, not as punishment, but as protection. In the Stoic sense, freedom is not about cutting someone off or proving you're over them. Freedom is not needing what once had a hold on you. It's standing in the space where their presence used to sway your emotions and realizing you no longer have to reach for it to feel complete. That is a kind of peace no one can give you and no one can take away. One practical way to anchor yourself in this strength is to write down 3 non-negotiables you now have for any relationship, romantic or otherwise. Keep them clear, measurable, and rooted in respect. When someone from your past reappears, hold their actions, not just their words, up against that list. If they can't meet those standards now, it's not your job to wait for them to grow into it. Here's the truth that surprises people the most. When you no longer need someone, you can finally see them clearly. You see the good without forgetting the bad. You can appreciate what was without mistaking it for what should be again. And sometimes, the greatest act of love, for them and for yourself, is to let the past remain the past. Because the moment you realize you don't need them anymore, you've already won. And if they can feel that in your calm, measured response, they'll understand something no speech could make clearer. You've moved on, not because you had to, but because you chose to. And that choice is yours to keep. Sign number 4. They test if you're still predictable. It starts innocently enough, a message out of nowhere. I heard our song today. Or, remember that trip we took? On the surface it feels warm, nostalgic, even touching. But if you look closer, you'll see something else at play. This isn't always about reconnecting. More often, it's a quiet test. A way of finding out if you'll still respond exactly the way you used to. This isn't limited to exes. It happens in every arena of life. An old friend you haven't spoken to in years suddenly drops a memory in your inbox. A sibling who's kept their distance sends a random emoji after months of silence. Even a former boss who burned bridges might check in under the guise of remembering a shared win. In all of these cases, the underlying question is the same. Can I still get a reaction out of you? The reason they do this is simple. Predictable people are easy to keep in your orbit. If they can still make you light up, drop everything, or lean into old dynamics, it tells them your emotional door is still open. And once they know that, they can step in and out of your life on their terms. Here's the danger. If you respond with too much eagerness, you're not just answering their message, you're reopening the channel in a way that hands them the controls. You're allowing the pace, the depth, and even the meaning of the interaction to be set by them, not you. It feels good in the moment because it scratches the itch of familiarity, but in reality, you've just traded your power for a brief hit of sentiment, and the cost doesn't always show up immediately. Over time, you start giving emotional reassurance without ever getting commitment or clarity in return. You become the comfort they turn to when they're bored, lonely, or curious, but not when they're ready to truly invest in the relationship, whatever form it may take. It's like being someone's favorite book on the shelf. They'll pull you down when they want a familiar story, but they're never going to rewrite the ending with you. The Stoic approach here is about control, not over them, but over yourself. You decide when and how to respond. If you choose to reply, do it with warmth, but without invitation. Something as simple as, "Good to hear from you. Hope you're doing well," sends a clear signal. You acknowledge the connection, but you're not stepping back into the old role. You're not offering more than you're willing to give. Before you respond at all, pause and ask yourself, does this move me closer to clarity, or does it just comfort them? If the answer is the latter, hold back. Not to punish, but to protect the boundaries you've worked hard to build. Every interaction is either moving you toward a healthier dynamic or back into the patterns you've outgrown. There is no neutral ground. When you refuse to be predictable, something shifts. People who once counted on your automatic replies have to face a new reality. They can no longer script your reactions, and that uncertainty forces them to decide, will they step forward with clarity or drift away entirely? Either outcome is a win, because you're no longer living at the mercy of someone else's curiosity. The truth is, you don't have to cut someone off to change the game. Sometimes, all it takes is making them realize you're no longer playing the same one. And when they feel that, they'll understand. Your time, your energy, and your attention are no longer on autopilot. They have to be earned, and that's when the dynamic truly changes. Sign number 5. They bring chaos to regain control. You recognize it the moment it arrives. The message isn't warm or thoughtful, it's messy. Words tangled together like wires sparking in the dark. There's blame in there, a little defensiveness, a few confusing turns that leave you wondering whether it's meant to pull you closer or push you away. But here's the truth. It's not really about resolution. It's about control. When someone feels they've lost the power to influence you through affection, they'll often switch tactics. If they can't win you back with warmth, they'll try to win back something else, your attention. Emotional chaos becomes the tool. Stir the pot, and maybe you'll lean over to see what's bubbling. This can happen anywhere. In the workplace, it's the colleague who's been silent for months suddenly questioning your decisions in front of others, forcing you to defend yourself. In family, it's the unexpected late-night call, packed with half-remembered grievances and just enough nostalgia to keep you from hanging up. In past relationships, it's the ex who mixes criticism with longing, hoping the whiplash will shake something loose in you. The aim is rarely to fix anything. The real objective is to confirm they can still provoke a reaction, because a reaction, even a negative one, tells them they still have a thread tied to you. And when you respond too quickly, especially with emotion, you hand that thread right back. In that moment, they're not thinking, "We're connecting again." They're thinking, "I can still move them." The danger is subtle because chaos doesn't always come as a storm. Sometimes it's a drizzle of unclear messages, backhanded compliments, or questions designed to confuse rather than clarify. And if you're not grounded, you'll get pulled into the game without even realizing it. Every word you send becomes another piece of evidence to them that they still have influence over your state of mind. This is where discipline matters. Your job is not to match their energy, but to maintain your own. If a message comes in without respect or clarity, remind yourself, you are not obligated to respond just because someone demands your attention. You're allowed to let the noise pass without becoming part of it. In fact, your calm silence will speak far louder than any defensive argument could. One of the most effective tools you can use is the 24-hour rule. When a heated or chaotic message comes in, commit to waiting a full day before deciding whether to respond. This pause creates space between their emotion and your decision. It keeps you from reacting out of impulse and gives you time to ask the right question. Will my response lead to resolution, or will it just feed the fire? The Stoics knew that self-control is the truest form of power. When you can face disorder without letting it disrupt your internal order, you've already won. Your refusal to engage in the chaos on their terms forces them to confront something they can't control, your composure. And in many cases, that will unsettle them far more than any sharp reply ever could. So the next time someone tries to pull you back into their storm, remember this. You don't owe anyone the comfort of knowing they can still shake you. Let your stillness be the boundary. Let your restraint be the mirror they can't escape, and watch what happens when they realize their old ways of reaching you no longer work, because that's the moment the dynamic truly changes. Sign number 6. They seek relief, not reconnection. It arrives quietly, often without warning. I just wanted to say I wish you the best. On the surface, it feels kind. It sounds like closure. But if you look closer, you'll see it's rarely about rebuilding anything. More often, it's about them finding relief, easing their own guilt, softening their own discomfort, while leaving you with the weight of what's unsaid. People like knowing the door is still open, even if they have no intention of walking through it. That simple knowledge, that if they ever did decide to return, you'd still be there, can give them a strange sense of comfort. And when they send these messages, they're often looking for exactly that reassurance. They don't want the relationship, the partnership, or the bond to truly come back to life. They just want to know it hasn't been buried completely. The danger for you is subtle. If you respond too warmly, too quickly, you give them exactly what they came for: emotional relief. You soothe the tension they've been carrying. You make them feel better about how things ended. But nothing changes for you. Your reality stays the same. You're left with old feelings stirred up again, wondering whether this tiny spark might mean something more. And that confusion, that emotional turbulence, is the opposite of what you've been working toward. The truth is, their message is less about you and more about their own emotional maintenance. It's a way for them to touch base with the version of you that once gave them comfort, without actually stepping into the work of rebuilding trust, respect, or genuine connection. They get to leave the interaction feeling lighter, while you might leave it feeling unsettled. And that imbalance is a sign this was about their peace, not yours. That's why your response matters. This is not the moment for long explanations, vulnerable confessions, or open-ended questions. Instead, reply briefly, politely, and without invitation. Thank you. I wish you well too. This kind of answer acknowledges the humanity in the gesture without handing over more emotional access than you're willing to give. It keeps the interaction clean, no hooks, no lingering strings. The Stoics understood the power of restraint in moments like this. They knew that not every kindness requires a doorway in return. Sometimes the most respectful thing you can do for yourself and the other person is to leave the past in its rightful place. Your dignity is not found in how warmly you respond. It's found in how clearly you protect the life you've built since. One practical way to stay steady in these moments is to prepare in advance. Keep a set of what I call closure phrases saved in your notes. Lines that are polite but firm, brief but final. When a message like this comes in, you won't have to scramble for the right words or risk saying more than you should in the heat of emotion. You'll have the language ready to go, and with it, the power to respond on your terms. Because here's the quiet truth most people miss. You don't need to punish them, and you don't need to prove anything to them. All you need to do is make sure your answer aligns with your growth, not with your old patterns. And when you do, you send a message far stronger than any long conversation could convey, that the chapter you've closed stays closed, not out of bitterness, but out of respect for the person you've become. And that realization will echo far longer than your reply ever will. Sign number 7. Your silence makes them uneasy. In the beginning, they welcome it. The quiet feels like space, like a weight lifted. They tell themselves this is what they needed, to breathe without the tension of conversations, without the responsibility of responding to your presence. But as the days stretch on, the quiet stops feeling like space and starts feeling like a locked door. They thought they could open it any time. Now they're not so sure. The reason this shift happens is simple. Many people regulate their emotions by triggering yours. Whether it's through arguments, explanations, or leaning on you for comfort, your reactions have always been part of their coping mechanism. When that's gone, they're left with their own feelings, unfiltered, unsoftened, and often uncomfortable. Silence doesn't just remove your voice, it removes the emotional scaffolding they've been leaning on. At first, they try to shrug it off. They tell themselves you're just busy or you'll come around. But when the expected message doesn't come, when the argument they thought would flare up never starts, the absence begins to grow heavier. It's not punishment, it's a mirror. And in that mirror, they start to see what you carried for so long, the imbalance, the unresolved issues, the parts of themselves they've been avoiding. That kind of reflection is unsettling. It can drive them to act in ways they never expected, sending sudden messages, stirring old memories, even picking fights, just to restore the old dynamic where they could read you, trigger you, or feel connected through conflict. It's not always conscious, but it is deeply human. When we lose a familiar rhythm, even a toxic one, we often scramble to get it back. Here's where your challenge lies. You might feel the pull to break the silence, to ease their discomfort, to reassure them that you're still there. But you have to ask yourself, whose comfort are you protecting? The Stoics would warn you against trading your peace for someone else's ease. Your silence isn't about freezing them out. It's about holding a boundary that honors your growth. If you rush to fill the space, you hand back the emotional control you've worked so hard to reclaim. When the temptation to reach out is strong, give yourself a buffer. Write the message in a journal instead of sending it. Let the words sit for 48 hours. More often than not, you'll find the urge to send it fades, and with it, the need to reopen a door that's better left closed for now. This isn't coldness, it's discipline. It's choosing to respond from clarity instead of reacting from habit. And here's the viral truth most people never say out loud. Silence, when it comes from strength and not spite, has a weight all its own. It forces the other person to feel the space you once filled. It makes them realize the access they assumed was permanent can be lost. And that realization can change the dynamic forever. So, hold the quiet. Not to punish, not to win, but to protect the life you're building beyond the noise. In time, they'll understand that the door didn't lock itself. You simply stopped standing in it, waiting for them to walk through. And that understanding will speak louder than anything you could have said. Every sign you've heard before this, whether it's them rewriting the past, testing your predictability, bringing chaos to regain control, or seeking relief instead of reconnection, points to one truth. Your power lies in how you respond, or whether you respond at all. The Stoic action framework is your compass in these moments, keeping you steady no matter which tactic you face. First comes awareness. You spot the sign for what it truly is, without being swept up by the surface emotion. Then comes discernment, the discipline to pause and ask, what's really driving this? Is it reconnection, control, guilt, or curiosity? From there, you move to choice. This is where you decide if engaging serves your peace or steals from it. And finally, execution. You respond with clarity, or you choose silence, always in alignment with your principles, never from impulse. Your goal isn't to pull them back into your world, prove their version wrong, or fix the discomfort they've created for themselves. Your goal is to remain the man who values self-respect over temporary validation, the man who refuses to hand back control once he's reclaimed it. And here's the truth worth remembering. If you can hold this line, calm, clear, and consistent, not only will you navigate their return during no contact with unshakable strength, you'll face every test life throws at you with the same unmovable resolve. That's the point where your silence becomes a statement, your presence becomes a choice, and your life is lived entirely on your terms. If this message touched you, like this video and subscribe to Stoic Station. Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Then, keep moving forward. Click the next video on your screen and take the next step in your journey. Your evolution is calling, but remember, it won't wait forever.